Welcome to Rock and Metal Songwriting, where I help you go from riff ideas to fully finished songs. I'm Quincy Kane, and this is day number 15 of my 20-day songwriting question challenge. Today's question is, should I write lyrics or music first? So we're going to dive into that in a bit, but if you've got a question yourself, feel free to leave it in the chat, or if you're watching on the replay, just leave a comment and I'll do my best to get back to your question. But today's question, should I write lyrics or music first? And there's no rule. It's not that one you have to do one way as opposed to the other, or that one way is even better than another. It's really about finding which method works best for you. And that can change. That can, depending on what instrument or instruments you specialize or prefer, depending on maybe the style that you're going for. It's really about figuring out what's best for you, which is what I want to help you do. And so I'm going to kind of look at both methods. I'm going to look at writing the music first and then the lyrics and talk about the benefits, the pros and cons of doing that way. And then we'll look at writing the music first writing the lyrics first and then the music and talk about the pros and cons of doing it that way. But what you should really know is most of the time for any song, there's going to be a lot of back and forth between the lyrics and the music. There are times that lyric ideas might inspire the music that you write, or vice versa. You write music and that inspires the lyrics. And it's not always that you write all of the music first and then the lyrics, or that you write all of the lyrics first and then the music. Sometimes you might only start at one point and then you start working on the other point, and the two kind of go back and forth until eventually you get to a complete song. But let's start looking into this. Now, most of the time, the way I like to do it, the way I recommend, is writing the music first. And here's what I like about that. So let's say you've got a music idea. Usually you're not just writing the music, but you're coming up with the melody as well. And what's great about that is once you've got a melody, it's almost like fill in the blank. You're kind of figuring out, all right, I know I'm going to sing here and I know what I'm going to sing. I know the melody, the notes that I'm going to sing. Now I just need to replace the la-di-da, your temporary, when you're singing your melody, you might have la da 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 da, you're just kind of singing syllables. You're not singing actual words. Now all you have to do is replace that with words, with lyrics that have actual meaning to it. So you've kind of figured everything out, and then all you have to do is find the words. So that's kind of the nice thing, is you know what you're going to be singing. The downside of doing it that way, the downside when you write the music and you've got the melody and you've got to figure out lyrics, is that it limits what you can put there. You can't just sing anything, and you can't just come up with any particular phrase. You might even know what you're trying to say, but just because you know what you're trying to say, now you have to problem solve and you have to fit it into that blank space that you've created. So let me just give you an example of what I mean. So let's say you've got a riff. Let's say this is your chorus riff. You like that music, and so you come up with a melody, and let's say you come up with this. Da da dum 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 da da dum da da. So we've got a melody. Now we just got to put words there, okay? So let's look at that first part. Dum 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 dum. That's 5 notes. La da 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 da. Okay, so that means we can either put 5 words there or 5 syllables there. But that's all you get is 5 something. So I can't just sing anything. I can't just fit any sentence into that. I can only fit 5 words or 5 syllables into that space. So this song, I ended up filling it with the words, so farewell to fear. So farewell. Not coming through. So farewell to fear and good luck to me. So the bright side of that, or I should say the downside first, is that it does limit what you could put. You can't just sing anything. The upside is that when you do find something that works, it fits really well. It sounds like it belongs because it kind of does. It's something that already works well with the music. It doesn't feel like it's being forced in there. It doesn't sound like It was kind of an afterthought. It almost sounds like it was perfectly designed or manufactured to fit with your music. So that's the good side. The downside is it requires a lot of problem solving. It is a bit of a puzzle. You're trying to find out, how do I say what I want to say in the song, but find the right wording that can fit in with the melody that you've come up with. Excuse me. Now, the other thing, though, even still, it's not just, oh, I just need 5 words or 5 syllables. See, the way we speak, some words, there's a certain cadence to certain words, or some words are going to have, or certain syllables are going to have more stress on them than others. So you can't even pick just any 5 words that you want. Let's say I went with different lyrics. Instead of "so farewell to fear," what if the lyrics were, let's see, da-dum-dum-dum-dum. Let's say I did, "Would someone just show," okay? Would someone just show. So that's 5 words. There's a problem there. First off, it doesn't sound like a complete thought. So farewell to fear. That kind of sounds like I've kind of said one part. Maybe there's more to come, but it still sounds like a complete thought. So farewell to fear. Okay? Would someone just show? Show what? Would someone just show? It's sort of an incomplete sentence, but that word someone, would someone, the way I'm singing it, it's putting the stress on one, but that's not how we say the word. We say someone. The stress is on someone. We don't say someone. Would someone just show me some love? Would someone just show me some? The emphasis isn't on one. The emphasis is on some. Would someone just show me some love? But the way that melody is set up, the stress is on that second syllable. And so when you try putting the word someone in there, would someone, it's kind of putting stress on the one, and it makes it sound awkward and a bit unnatural. And so that's kind of the downside of writing the music and the melody first, is that you can't just pick any word or any phrasing. You have to find words that fit appropriately and they actually flow. Now, with that said, you do have some flexibility. You're not totally locked into it. That's actually kind of one of the benefits, is you might have an established melody, but you're not totally locked in, like you have to find 5 words or syllables. There are little things you can do, little tweaks or variations or adjustments you can make to help make a lyric work. So let me give you an example. Think of your melody as the identity, and you just need, or as the foundation, but it's okay to sort of veer off and add things or tweak things as long as the main idea is still there. So think of the Indiana Jones theme, okay? Da-da-dum-da, da-da-dum, okay? If I were to sing that, da-da-dum-dum, it's the melody for Indiana Jones. But if I added an extra hit, da-da-dum-dum-dum, it doesn't destroy the melody. It still sounds like Indiana Jones, but even though I added a second hit there, da-da-dum-da-dum, or something like that, it's not enough to make it sound like a completely different melody. Even if I added a little tail at the end, da-da-dum-dum, da-da-dum. Okay, I added a little flourish there at the end, but it still sounds like the Indiana Jones melody. Now, if I took those same notes and I rearranged them, da-da-dum, da-dum, it's like, what happened? It became something different. I almost sang another part of that same song, but, if I sang da-da-da-da-da-dum, now it's not distinguishable as that melody. So what I'm saying there is, when you're trying to write a song, think of your melody as kind of the foundation, but it's okay to add little adjustments. Like, you don't have to stay with those single notes. You can add an extra hit here or there, come in a little earlier, add a few extra notes at the end to make it work. I'll give you an example of that. I wrote a song called Pull the Trigger, and the main melody, if I play the verse, the main melody goes like this. Da-da-dum, da-dum, da-dum, dum. Okay? Da-da-dum, dum, dum, da-dum, dum. And there are parts where I sing it just like that. In the second verse, you had caught me by surprise. Okay? It fits. That's the melody. You had caught me by surprise. But I wrote a lyric that I really liked, but it had too many words and it didn't quite fit in. And yet I was still able to make it work. The very first lyric goes like this. Thought you died a long time ago. So you can hear it still sounds like the same melody, but I'm adding a few more hits instead of da-da-dum-dum-dum. Instead of that single note right there, da-da-dum-dum-dum, da-dum-dum. I'm going da-da-dum-dum, da-dum. I add a second hit there. Da-da-da-dum-dum. And so I made that variation just so I could say what I wanted to say. Thought you died a long time ago. So you're allowed to do that. You're allowed to take your main melody and add little variations or little tweaks just to help make a lyric work. Again, I'm not completely changing the melody. It's still recognizable as the main melody of that song, but you can add those variations just to give you a little more flexibility with the lyrics. So the way I like to write and the way I recommend is starting with your music first, because when you write the music first, you already get a sense of the vibe. Like, does it sound like a sad song, a happy song, an angry song, frustrated? Does it sound lonely? Does it sound desperate? Does it sound determined? You know, what kind of song does it sound like? And that can motivate what you're going to write about to begin with. So then you come up with your melody, and then you kind of have an idea. You can sort of figure out what topic you want to sing about, what sounds appropriate for the style of music and the vibe of the song. And then, yes, it's a little bit of a puzzle, but once you find the right words that fit in with the melody that you've come up with, it feels like it's designed to fit in there. It doesn't feel like it's forced, and it works really well. So that's the way I prefer to write music. But there's no rule that says you can't start with lyrics first. And so let's look at that. What about writing lyrics first? Can you actually write a song from that? Well, here are the pros and cons of that. First off, it might depend on the kind of writer that you are. And what I mean by that is I actually had some friends back in high school, some female friends, and I don't know if this is just, if there's a difference there, but they seem to enjoy writing lyrics, like just writing lyrics, no music, but they would just write the words. And I have a feeling that's just the way they like to express themselves. They liked picking up a pencil and a journal and they'd come up with a lyric to express whatever emotion was on their mind. Whereas me, if I'm wanting to express myself, I tend to, rather than picking up a pencil and pen and paper, I prefer to pick up an instrument and find the notes. I like finding the music. And my favorite thing is having an idea and then imagining what it can sound like and getting into my recording software and starting to bring it to life, starting to add those layers, the drum beat and the bass and the guitar layers, and then writing the melody. And so I like hearing my song come to life and then afterwards finding the right words, like what I want the song to actually be about. That's me. But again, like I said, I had friends that wrote the lyrics first. And I actually had one friend who wrote some really cool lyrics and had a melody in mind, and then I was able to collaborate with them and write music to their lyrics. So that's a pretty cool thing. So if you find yourself more like that, if you're the kind of person that you just like to get your thoughts and your feelings out on paper and you like to write the words, there's nothing wrong with doing that. You don't have to write the music first. You can do that first. Now, here are the pros of that. Here's the upside. If you write that way, you do have more flexibility. You can you're not restrained or limited by what you can do and say. You can write anything you want, so you can write all out. Now, I would still advise that you think musically while you're writing. So obviously you want to try to find rhymes. You want to think about rhythm. And here's kind of one of the dangers. It's not really a con, but it's something you need to be aware of. I know when I try to write just the lyrics first, sometimes I tend to write the same rhythm. I kind of always start, like the phrasing of the words is almost always the same. Whereas when you write musically and you write the melodies, that kind of forces you to write your wording more in a different rhythm. You don't just default to the same rhythm every single time. So if I'm always writing just from a blank slate, I almost write all the rhymes kind of the same way. Yeah, just kind of the same way. Because there's no musical context, there's no beat or anything. So, but if you're aware of that, then you can take advantage of that. You can say, okay, I'm going to write, but let me try to write a little more rhythmically. Let me make these shorter phrases rather than longer phrases. Or let me do 2 short phrases and then a long phrase. You know, if you can think more musically with your writing, even before you've written any music, then that might actually create the opportunity for some unique rhythms. Another thing to keep in mind is you can write your melody first. Now, very rarely, I don't know if I've ever come up with a melody, because to me, I think melody and chord movement are such a beautiful marriage. Like, I think the chord movement has such influence over the melody. So a lot of times I like the chord movement first, and then I'm looking for those melodic notes that just stand out, like that just blend in such a nice way with the chords that I found. So that's the way I like to do it. But that doesn't mean you can't make up a melody. Even right now, like on the spot, I could just say da da dum dum da da dum da da dum da 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 dum. You know, I just made that up. That's a melody I made up. But, you know, I have no context for it. You don't know what chords go underneath of that. Now, that's kind of the cool thing. It's actually a really fun thing to do. So if you are more of a lyricist, if you like writing the words, but you can make yourself come up with a melody for the words, if you already have a melody in mind, that's actually really fun for a musician to write with, because you get this melody and then you get to choose what chords or what riff, what kind of music you want to put underneath of that. And again, one of my friends had written a song once and had a melody already. And it was really fun for me to come in and find a riff that I could add underneath it, find a chord progression that I could add underneath the melody that she had written. That was a really fun way to write. So it can be really cool. The downside, so that's the cool thing. You can write whatever you want. You have a little more flexibility with your words and your lyrics. And yeah, that's kind of the upside of writing the lyrics first. The downside is that then it's going to put limitations on what you can do musically. Again, you might write something that works well, but if you write too much, it might be hard to come up with a good, catchy melody. It might sound more like a run-on sentence. If you try adding it to music, it might almost feel forced. It doesn't feel like a perfect blend. Like if you've already written the melody, like I was explaining in the first example, that feels like a perfect marriage. But when you're trying to make it work, once again, it can start to feel more forced. And once again, if you end up writing where everything sort of sounds kind of the same rhythmically, then it's going to limit what you can do musically. You're going to kind of be stuck having to choose similar rhythms. You might find that your songs come out sounding very similar. You can still have some influence with the kind of notes and the kind of chords that you choose, but rhythmically and structurally, your songs might sound very similar. But you can kind of break that. And what I would say is, if you're going to write lyrically, probably the best thing to keep in mind is you have to be willing to be a little flexible. So you might write a lyric that you really like, but as you're working with the music, you might find, hey, this phrasing is a little long. Maybe there's a way I can say this, but shorten the phrasing. Or maybe if I swapped out some of the words, change some of the words, I can make it fit better musically. So as long as you're willing to make those compromises, then you can hopefully create something that works a little bit better. But like I said, it's not so much that one way is better than the other. It really just goes on with what you prefer. And then whatever method you prefer. And there's going to be a sense of going back and forth. Sometimes, like again, a lot of times I'll write the chorus first. I'll write the lyrics for the chorus, but I don't just continue to write the lyrics for the rest of the song. I might go on to then write the music for the verse, kind of go back and forth. I'll write the music for the chorus, then the lyrics. Then I'll write the music for the verse and then the lyrics. Sometimes the lyrics will give me an idea of what to write next. Like if I've written my verses and chorus, the lyrics might sound like they're building up to something, and I say, oh, you know, the bridge, musically, I need something climactic, something really big. Or, you know, the lyrics sound like I need to tear things down. I need to go to something smaller in the bridge. So the lyrics might influence the kind of music that I write, and vice versa. The music might influence the kind of lyrics that I write. Oh, this section sounds vulnerable, so the lyrics need to be vulnerable. Or this section sounds very aggressive and angry, so the lyrics need to be aggressive and angry. The two kind of influence each other, and they're going to go back and forth. So you might have sort of a default method that you fall to, and I think that's really important for being consistent, but there's nothing wrong with experimenting and trying different things. It might even be a fun challenge. If you feel like your songs are kind of coming out the same, maybe try a different method. If you tend to write your music first, maybe give yourself an exercise where you try writing the lyrics first for once. And you don't have to write all the lyrics. You might just write a few lines and then let that try to write a melody and a chord progression or a riff to go along with those few lyrics, and then that can inspire the rest of the song. So don't think you have to write the complete music first or the complete lyrics first. You might just write some of the music and some of the lyrics and then let those kind of go back and forth and influence each other. So there we go. Hopefully that gives you some tips. I do see we have a few people in the chat. Karen, I appreciate you tuning in. I want to be a successful songwriter. I'm just a beginner. Any advice? Well, if you're still there, I'll give you an answer. And if you're watching on the replay, hopefully you'll check it out. Let me know if you're still there. First off, I'd say, what do you mean by successful? If you're meaning like you want to be famous and have a career as a songwriter, there's a few different ways that you can do that. If you just mean successful in you want to be successful in writing songs, like you just want to have finished songs, I can kind of tell you how to do that. But success is kind of how you define it. What exactly do you mean by that? If you're talking about a career, the thing about any career, any business endeavor, there's really just one rule, and it's what value can you provide to somebody else? What service can you provide? People want a certain outcome, and if you can give it to them, then you can make a business, okay? So what that means is if you want to have a business as a songwriter, the truth is you probably need to write songs for people who are looking for songs to be written for them. So you might write a song, somebody, needs a little jingle for their commercial or something like that. Or somebody needs an opening theme for an independent show or a little mini series that they're doing, or a podcast or something, whatever it might be. I haven't dived into that field too much, so I can't say, but the point is there might be people that are looking for songwriters and could hire you to write a song for them. So the upside is, like, yes, you can have a career as a songwriter writing songs for other people. The downside is you are writing for them. So it's not necessarily you getting to write your own creative vision. It's not necessarily that you get to write anything that you want. You are serving the other person. So you're writing to their expectations and writing to their taste and their preferences. Now, if you want to write for yourself, if you say, oh, I want to be an artist, I want to express myself and write my own songs, and I want to be successful, I will say this. The truth is it's very hard to make a career just from music. There's certain... there's certain compromises you'd have to be willing to make. Like, the biggest thing is you need an audience. You need people who actually want your music and then are going to pay you for it. But the question is, where does the money come from? The best I've seen is from playing live shows. So if you can write songs and get out and start playing live, that's really your best bet at starting to build an audience and starting to make a little bit of money. But keep in mind, it is going to be just a little bit of money, especially at first. And so depending on the style of music you write, if you're writing a style of music where you can just write it on a guitar and you can just start getting out and busking as in you're just going out like to the downtown mall or something, going out somewhere on the street corner, and you can just set out a little tip jar and start playing music. That way you can kind of book your own gigs. Even if you can't book a gig, you can still go out and play for people out in the public. But then you could try booking gigs at small coffee shops, cafes, little venues, things like that, and work your way up. Eventually, if you can form a band or have the money to hire musicians to play with you, that can be another way to start going. But if you want my honest advice, like, that's what you can do, but just understand that's a very tough road. And even when you do make money, it's not going to be a lot of money. So if you're okay with being poor for a long time and you're okay with spending all your money and going all in on a career like that and having to probably eat very like junk food, like just not, if you're willing to compromise your health and compromise the comfort of your living and put all the money that you have and every little bit of money you make just into your career, then yes, you can make it happen. Now, is that completely necessary? I don't think so. In my opinion, I think you're better off finding a career that can support your passion. So find a career that can make a lot of money but doesn't take a whole lot of time, so then you can take the money that you make from that career and invest it in your passion of songwriting. And then that way, rather than having to spend all your time, because the truth is, you're probably not going to get paid for writing songs. The payment is going to come from selling merchandise from people who want to buy it, which, again, you need an audience of people who want to buy your merch, or playing live shows and the venue paying you, getting tips from playing live shows. And even then, even if you're successful in selling that stuff, you need a large mass of people for that to be a substantial amount of money. So in my honest opinion, and the truth is a lot of people in the music industry, like there are, I don't even know if it's still possible to grind your way to the top. There are bands that, yeah, they were poor for a while and they played enough shows, built up the audience, and they made it. But we live in such different times now where everyone kind of consumes music in their own bubble. Like there aren't big artists that pop up anymore that everybody knows. People discover music on a much more, like a much smaller scale, which for us as musicians makes it a lot harder to make money doing that. So honestly, I would recommend look up Graham Cochran and learn how to make an online business. And I would recommend coming up with a business based off something you're passionate about. Find a way that you can serve people and get paid for it, something that you enjoy doing, that you're passionate about, that you can make money doing, and then use your time and money to fuel your passion. Still write songs. You should still write songs. You should still share them and put them out there. So anyway, I hope that kind of gives you a sense. I don't even know if you're still watching right now, but hopefully if you watch on the replay, that gives you kind of an idea of what to do. Silas, I appreciate you tuning in as well. Hope you're doing well. But that's going to be all for today. Again, if you have any more questions, just leave them in the chat and I'll or in the comment section. I'll try to get back to them. But if you have any more questions or any tips yourself, anything that's worked for you, feel free to leave them in the comment. And if you're interested in taking your songwriting to the next level and you would like to work one-on-one with me, there's a link in the description to apply for a free coaching call. That's all for today. Until next time.